Okay, welcome everybody. Today for Brand Deep Dive, we are deep diving in with a brand that's been around for a while, to Houndstown. So Caleb and Melissa, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
Thanks
you
for
for
having
having
us.
us.
So we've got two people here to fill us in. It takes two to help us understand this model. But I mean, basically, when I look at it, I think doggy daycare. So then we have to go, okay, Caleb and Melissa, help us understand, what does Houndstown do? So let's start there.
Houndstown is a fully interactive doggy daycare, dog boarding facility, and spa as well. So we do have a spa. Some of our locations also have a pet taxi and a cat room, but those are not required of all of the
Okay.
locations. So our goal is really just to enrich the bond between humans and their animals by providing them time in natural pack environments, just like they would in the wild.
Very cool. And that's, I mean, as you rattle that off, I write down multiple revenue streams. They're making business from more than one revenue stream, right? From the business hat of it.
Yes, multiple and complementary revenue streams as well, right? So you can always tack one onto the other to increase that average ticket price so that the revenue kind of goes up. And we're always looking at different types of revenue streams we can add to help pad the owner's bottom line. We actually have a puppy socialization program in testing right now, which is meant to be a
Oh,
feeder
fun.
into our daycare. So lots of things kind of going on and lots of opportunities for franchise owners to really increase that average unit volume.
Absolutely. How many locations do you have now?
We have a little over 90 right now. So
Okay.
90 open and operating, and then I think we have about 100 in the pipeline to open. So our goal
Right.
by the end of this year is to have 100 open and 100 in the pipeline to be awarded
Okay.
or to be open. So we're almost there. We've had a really great couple of years, but are still growing mindfully and very intentionally. We want to find the right people to own these because that's really, really important to our culture and our core values.
Absolutely. It's funny. I'm not sure I told you guys this story, but so when Brad and I were figuring out what was going to be our first official launch into the franchise space, one of the things we were looking at was a doggy daycare concept and ended up going in a different direction. And very often we'll say the direction we went, he'll say, I just want to pet the dogs. I think we should go back to that. I'm like, that seems like a great model. But it was funny when we were talking, you said, actually, it's not all about petting dogs, Lise.
Yeah.
There's actually a business going on. So talk about that. I think the assumption is I'm going to show up and turn on the lights and then just pet the dogs all day. Talk a little bit about the ownership model. What are you looking for in an owner? What are they
Yeah.
doing every day?
The unique value prop that Houndstown has is we speak dog. We pride ourselves on one of our founders, Mike Gould. He was one of the first NYPD canine officers back in the 80s. And so he
Okay.
came up as like training canine units and working dogs. And actually, Houndstown was founded because he was a large part of the 9/11 first responders group. And so
Ah,
once all the first responders in New York had to go to New York City to respond, they all had their dogs. And he basically took them all in and created a doggy daycare for first responders responding to the 9/11 events. And so that's really kind of how Houndstown was spawned, right? Big differentiator is, we don't hire dog consultants. We are the dog people. Like we have the
okay.
dog consultants in house. So we know how dogs are supposed to act. We know how they're supposed to be placed together. We know how to manage them. We're experts in dog management. A lot of
Okay.
these other competitors out there, they do doggy daycare, but they don't have any clue on actual dog management, right? And so that's a big differentiator. We don't turn away any dogs based on breed discrimination. Pit bulls,
Okay.
Rottweilers, anybody, they're all welcome as long as they can pass the temperament test. So that's a huge differentiator as well. We create specialized play groups. And so it's a part of science. It's a part of how dogs are supposed to interact with each other. We have smaller pack sizes, typically with 5+ play areas. And so it's based
Okay.
on things like temperament, energy levels, their play styles. So they're smaller, more specialized pack sizes, and we don't interact with them. So
In some, you see somebody walking around, right? There's always
yeah, a lot of competitors, they'll tout like, we have, well, you can upcharge for playtime and belly rubs and all these crazy things. And it's like, it's all for the humans to feel better about themselves, not for the dog. The dogs could care less, to be honest with you. And so that's a common misconception. One of our guarantees, which is very unique, and when you start getting into the world of Houndstown and the townie culture, is we guarantee what we call a Houndstown hangover. And what that means is when your dog comes home from Houndstown, they are exhausted. They literally
Okay.
just come in and they lay on the floor, and the the owners are like, "What did you do to my dogs today?" Like, they won't get off the floor, and it's
Okay.
because all they do is they play with other dogs all day for 6 hours. We don't change them in and out. We don't put them in there for an hour and then put them in a kennel. They literally play with dogs for 6 hours straight. They don't
Okay.
stop and they don't interact with humans. They play and that is it. And so it's a
Okay.
huge differentiator. So people immediately, they'll, especially people that have struggled with their dogs being turned away because of aggression or this or that, or maybe they have a pit bull and then they'll be accepted into Houndstown. And not only will they be accepted, their dog will come back completely exhausted because they just played and had so much fun all day. So it's very, very unique in the space of dog daycare and dog boarding.
Yeah, I'll add to that too. We also allow dogs with different abilities. So dogs that are blind, dogs that are deaf, they're more than welcome to be at Houndstown as long as, like Caleb said, they can pass the temperament test. So we don't turn away any dog because of their abilities or breed. We just want every dog to have a chance to make friends and have fun, just like humans want to, right?
Aw, that's awesome. You said there's 5 different areas. So
At
my
minimum.
12-year-old Morky, if you told him he had to play all day, he'd be like, Mom,
Yeah,
I
right.
gotta take a nap, woman.
Yep.
So
So you could have a play group with dogs that are maybe not the same sizes, but all just the same temperament and age. Like I have a pit
okay.
bull and she's 13 years old. I also have a 7-month-old doodle and
Okay.
he's just wild, right? And
Right.
she wants to just lay around do nothing all day. She gets
Right.
along with other smaller and whatever dogs that just don't want to do anything, you know?
Right. There's so many things nice about this industry, right? I think a lot of it is a lot of money is spent on our dogs, a lot of time and attention. We make choices based on who's going to watch the dog this weekend, right? Who's taking care of, where are they going to go? How are we going to travel and that type of thing. So you guys are taking that kind of stress off of the pet owner. And that's part of what we love about it because it's not anymore, we'll say a want instead of a need. People budget for this, right? This is something that someone's going to need to take care of this dog. Someone's going to need to groom it, this type of thing. So how does your marketing go? How does your marketing find me? How do you help how do we help your franchise owners find me in order to consider you? Because it's a little bit different, right? So I might not know that. I might not know that Rigby doesn't want a human walking around with him,
Yeah,
right?
it's omni-channel. So as what you would expect in the franchise industry, you're going to have a mixture of what you would generally see with digital marketing and also boots on the ground marketing.
Right.
The other thing that people don't think too much about is the actual testimonials that you see. An example of this is one of our other co-founders, Jackie Bondanza. Her story is very unique. She came as a customer of Mike's. And so she found Houndstown because she was at a last resort. She had two dogs that got turned away from facility after facility after facility, and she was going to have to get rid of them because she had an hour commute to her job. So her example of how she found Houndstown was she was trying to find the place that wouldn't turn her dogs away.
Okay. Wow.
And so, there's obviously the digital marketing and the boots on the ground marketing and local events and all the things. We have an incredible play that we run when it comes to launching marketing, and that's
Sure.
industry excellence. A larger part of it is like a lot of people don't know what to do in this situation. A lot of
Okay.
times it's a saving grace for people where they have an aggressive breed or they have two dogs that they need to send to the same place at the same time. One of them gets turned away and one of them doesn't. And it's like, what do you do in
Yeah, well,
that
that's not going to
situation?
work, right? It's like
Right.
having kids in 3 different schools.
And
Yeah,
so a
Caleb, I was
lot of
just thinking
times,
about our candidate that we have that had that happen to him.
you're right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a
Yep.
candidate who got a new dog, had an older dog for some time, had been going to a different daycare and sent the new dog to daycare with the older dog. And what? They just started fighting. They were fighting at home. They were fighting at daycare. They were fighting other dogs. And Caleb and I both looked at him and said, send
Take
him
him
to
to a
Houndstown.
Houndstown.
What are you doing? You're looking at
Right.
this as a business opportunity. Send him to Houndstown. He did, and it changed their whole life. They stopped fighting because they were able to separate them and create these curated packs like Caleb was talking about so that they are getting the stimulation that they need
Okay.
without aggression. They do get in scuffles, that's just natural because dogs tell you what's wrong with their mouths, right? They play with their mouths. They tell you what's wrong with their mouths. They don't have opposable thumbs like we do.
Right.
So scuffles happen, but the dogs are incredibly happier now just because of the difference in the dog management piece. So it's things like that that we really push out, especially when we're coming into a new market, to educate the customer on why we do things the way we do, because that's a huge piece of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the business side of it, right? So doggy daycares need a certain amount of square footage. They need to be certain lending pieces, things like that. So fill me in on that.
Yeah, I'll talk about the space a little bit and then I'll let Melissa speak to the investment breakdown. Yeah, so we're looking for spaces that are generally around 4 to 6,000 square feet.
Okay.
This is usually an industrial flex style space, warehouse space. So it can be a more high traffic area, does not necessarily have to be.
Okay.
So we're in a unique space where you don't necessarily have to find Class A real estate. That's not to say that real estate is not going to be difficult to find, because it can be. But we have an incredible in-house real estate development team with
Okay.
a ton of checks and balances and processes in place for using technology, AI, cell phone data, all the incredible industry leading standards that you would expect to find when searching for real estate. And, we don't necessarily have to find outside space, which is unique for the pet industry. A lot of places say you
Right.
need to have, a grassy outside area. We don't require that. In
Okay.
fact, most of our locations don't have that. We have a minimum of 5 play areas that we will require. Usually it's around 6 to 8 luxury suites, and then 25 to 50 or so townhomes. And it's flexible, right? So if we maybe have a different space, we can start with less luxury suites and scale into it, because how the model works is your quick cash. What happens first is your daycare. That's kind of where think about yourself as a customer. You're going to take your dog somewhere for a couple of daycare sessions and see how you like it, and build trust and rapport. And then once you have the trip coming up, you're going to say, oh, of course, they're going to go to Houndstown because that's where they go to daycare, right?
Okay, got it.
So the model works the same way. And because of that, when you first launch the business, your first 6 months, your first year, it's going to be the majority of your revenue is coming from your daycare. So you may not need those luxury suites, those boarding suites. And, some of our larger and more established locations, they need more of the boarding space. So they'll add that on later. But right on the first front end of the business, they'll start with a lot more daycare and then transition to more heavily focused on the boarding side once they get more established.
How long does it take to help someone from sign the franchise agreement? The first thing they must be starting then is real estate.
Generally speaking, no. We actually start them in onboarding first. And the reason we do that is because when they get to the real estate side, there's a lot of brand and business knowledge they need when they're searching and approving and negotiating leases with our team on the site selection space.
Okay.
They need to be knowledgeable on the business and the brand before they get to that point. And so the first thing we do is we start them through onboarding. We start them through our online training program. We get them into the brand, into the culture. We get them onboarded. And then we start them in the real estate and site selection process. So what I would say is, generally speaking, from the time you sign your franchise agreement to the time that you're executing a lease could be anywhere from 6 to 12 months, maybe, right? That's a realistic expectation that I would set. And then, depending on how fast and how long that takes, then you execute a lease. You're going into, that's when you're securing your loans typically, because you need to have your lease situated before you can completely fill out your pro forma and secure the loan. And then you're going to build out, right? So construction and build out. And then depending, that's usually quicker than most because we have a really, really awesome team that helps with that. So that could be, 6 to 8 weeks, maybe, just depending. Could be longer, but just really depends on how well that process goes. We bring architects in pretty early on with the LOI stage. So we're eliminating a lot of those hurdles that you typically see after the fact. But, so it could be 6 to 18 months until you're actually open for business. It really depends on the factors at hand and the market you're in and the real estate and development side of it.
So now Melissa, I think, is going to fill us in on the item 7 for those of you, if this is your first video that you're watching. Item 7, when we start talking about that, that's the total investment to get into the business. It includes your franchise fee, it includes your build out, it includes all of the technology, it includes working capital. But Melissa now is going to give us an understanding of what that looks like, because that's part of our decision, right? How much is this going to cost?
When you're talking about investment for Houndstown for one unit, you're looking at a range, it's a pretty large range, of about 450,000 all the way up to 1.2 million. So that's what's represented in our item 7. I will say on average, we probably see about 750 to $1 million. That's the sweet spot. And that, like you said, is consistent of everything that you need to get open and start operating, everything from the signs on the front of your building to the uniforms and all of the things that you need to get going. But typical is about 750 to.
And so we talked about the funding piece of it. 90 owners are out there. How many people are multi-unit owners?
We're about 80-20 at this point. So about 80% of our owners are just one unit owners, and then about 20% have multi-unit. And that's because we're very careful about who we allow to become multi-unit owners, right? We want to make sure, one, that they have the funds to be able to do this without the first location being profitable. So we don't want them to depend on the first location to fund the second one, right? That's one of the first things. But the second thing is, Houndstown is it's operationally heavy, especially at the beginning. And taking on multi-unit at first without an infrastructure, especially if you've never owned a business before, it can be daunting. So we want to make sure that we're bringing in the right people and not overextending them from the get-go. So what tends to happen is people will sign on for one unit and they'll own it for a few years, and then they'll say, oh my gosh, I love this. And then they'll come back to us and say, is this market open next to us? We'll make sure they're operationally ready, and then off they go.
Perfect. And so what are the business owners, once it's open? I'm sure in the beginning it's a lot of leases and build out and lots of questions there, but once that business is open, what is the owner doing with their day?
That depends on the owner.
Okay.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
So
what should they be doing? Let's change the question.
Well, I'll say, I think that when people come into franchise ownership, they look at it as kind of black and white, right? They look at it either they're going to be owner operator, or they're going to be active, semi-active, complete absentee, which we all know is not a thing, but it's not black and white.
Okay.
It is, can you build a team that you can trust to run your location if you were to want to go to Europe for a month, right?
Yeah.
We have owners that spend 50 hours a week in their locations because they want to.
Okay.
We also have owners that have other careers, other jobs, and they have strong teams that run their locations. So it is possible, but it is up to the owner to make sure they're building the right team so that the location can run effectively without them having their hands in it, right? So ideally, we'd like to see them doing marketing, community relations, financials, right? But it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes that's not their strengths, right? And so I always coach them to hire a team based on their strengths and weaknesses. You want to hire a team that's going to fill in those weaknesses that you as an owner would have, so that you can all work together really effectively.
What does that start out team look like? Do I have a manager and a groomer?
The reality of this business, and why Melissa is saying that, is operationally heavy. And when you launch this business, you have to be in it and learn how to run it yourself as the owner, no matter how you're planning to run it eventually.
Right.
So if you come in saying, I want to put 2 hours a day into this business, eventually, you still have to come in for the first 3 months, 6 months, however long it takes you to learn the business. You still have to do that, no matter if you're planning to eventually operate as semi-active. The reason that that's important in Houndstown is because it's such a unique model, in a sense that you have to train employees specifically on the dog management. You're not just training somebody on how to check somebody in at a counter, right? You're teaching somebody how to handle a dog, right? And how to be trusted with the customer, right? And so you have to spend a month or 2 months sometimes training some of these employees. It's not something you can just pull anybody off the street and it's like, all right, here you go, and then you're out a week later. Like, you have to, in the case that you have shift leads trained up, or you have a manager that you bring in, and maybe they leave, maybe they quit, whatever the case is, you have to be able to be knowledgeable enough on the business to step in that worst case scenario.
Okay.
So I say that to say, when you launch this business, you should plan on the first 3 to 6 months being there pretty often. And you need to be there enough to get yourself familiar with the business model. Coming from someone who's owned a handful of different businesses in different industries, I can't imagine a business that I'm launching and running that I don't know how to run myself personally. And I think that's the most unrealistic expectation that I often see in the franchise space, is that because this business is marketed that it can be ran semi-active or semi-absentee or however you want to define it, that it's going to be like that from the day that I launched the business. For Houndstown specifically, that is not the reality. You have to come in, you have to learn the business, you have to run it, and then once you know it and learn it and run it, now you know how to hire and staff it and keep your staff up to speed so that you can back yourself out of this business.
And so talk about the revenue then. So in that, got to be worth it, right? So as soon as we tell someone like this, you might need to leave your job, or your wife might have to be full-time in this business, or your husband might have to be full-time in this business if the other person wants to keep that position, usually the revenue is going to back it up and say, okay, it's worth it, right? So, so you, again, that are watching, FDD, item 19. Item 19 is where we start to get an understanding of the historical revenue in the business. It is not, repeat, it is not telling you how much money you're going to make in this business. You know that. But it is talking about how much money is being generated by other people in the business to help you start to put together your business plan / puzzle. So what is that looking like for Houndstown? What do you show in your item 19? What's happening there?
What don't we show in our item 19, Caleb?
Okay.
That's true. That's true. I'll just say, like, I have been in this industry a long time, and I've seen lots of FTDs and lots of item 19s. And Houndstown specifically, we've very intentionally been over transparent in our item 19. So there's 20 or so different tables in the item 19.
Wow. Okay.
There's tons of them. It breaks the business down into years in business, what percentage of revenue is coming from what revenue stream. Like, it's very, very detailed.
Okay.
The Cliff Notes version, and what I like to kind of extract from it as an initial, like, hey, you should look at this and really focus on diving into it, is we kind of focus on that 5-year range of people that have been business for about 5 years, because it just kind of starts to really all click at that like 3 to 5 year mark for most people. So our average revenue that we disclose in there for 5-year businesses is around 919,000 in revenues. That's the average that we see in the system. We have high net revenues of about 1.3 million at that point, and we have low net revenues about 558,000 or so at that point. So, obviously you're at a year in business, at 3 years in business, at 5 years in business, at 7 years in business. There's high, average, and low revenues for each stage, and it breaks each of them down to show you where the revenue is coming from and what you should be able to expect.
Interesting to have another video, yes, talking about Houndstown, of course, but also talking about the transparency of an item 19 and all the different avenues it can take, because I think that alone is education, whether or not people are looking at anything. I think item 19 sell franchises for sure, but they also should be an indicator of how to make money and how long it takes to make money. So I love that you do that. I don't know if this is going to make it into the brand deep dive, but it might. But I think having a call just around that, I've been thinking about it for a while, because it's the most talked about thing out there, right? Is what's the item 19 look like? And people make it sound like, well, that's what's going to sell me. It's like, no, that shouldn't sell you. That should at least keep you interested to learn more, but it shouldn't necessarily be the thing to sell you.
Talking to the franchisees is what should sell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When you've got 90 in your system, that's a lot of franchisees that are going to be able to have conversations. And that's also part of this.
And I would add one more thing on our item 19 is the transparency goes to the point where you can read it and see what growth could look like. The thing that I love is we give percentages of revenue, to average net operating income. And I've been in franchising for a long time, almost 10 years now. And I haven't seen a whole lot that grow as much as we're seeing in our item 19. So our business model is created in such a way that it's not limited. So think about like childcare, right? Once you have 300 kids in your location, that's it. You can't make more money because you can't add more kids. Well, we are flexible in that. So there's always an opportunity to add another dog by putting a kennel in one of the playrooms or something like that, so that you can always increase that revenue. And our item 19 shows that growth year over year.
Really interesting. I mean, you're really teaching people how to be business owners, right? Not just
Yep.
Houndstown managers, right?
Correct.
So
Exactly.
Well,
it's important.
the other thing to focus on too, and that we like to call out in this specific conversation, is that when you look at the business model, you look at businesses in every industry, they have different pros and cons for how they make money.
Sure.
The really cool thing that I think people need to understand about this model is that you have a fixed expense, relatively speaking, aside from maybe adding one kennel attendant here or there as you increase your dog count. But you have the facility expense, you have your marketing expense, your utilities, you have a fixed OpEx for the most part.
Okay.
And so once you hit a certain percentage, or you have so many dogs per day for daycare and so many boarding dogs, everything above that drops straight to the bottom line, which is why we focus so much on that year over year and that 1, 3, 5 year growth target, because we say, hey, when the performance that we're building out with our franchisees, before they even sign their lease, they already know before they sign their leases, this is your fixed expense for your OpEx.
Right.
This is the revenue you have to generate. This is where it's going to come from. This is how many dogs per day you need to see in daycare. This is how many boarding dogs you need to book for this year. It's broken down into monthly and weekly KPIs. So they know from day one exactly how much revenue they need to make and how long it should take them to get there. Right. And so when people talk to our franchisees, when we connect them through the process of discovery, they're talking about those numbers with them. They're saying like, yeah, I'm so long in business. I'm at this many dogs per day. This is how many daycare dogs I had last month. This is how many boarding dogs this next season coming up for this, because boarding is pretty seasonal with the holidays and vacations and stuff. This next boarding season is going to be, this is what I should exceed. And so like they know their business, which is so important.
Yes.
And that's extremely valuable when they're going through the discovery process.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good conversation, and why we take these deep dives. I think because business owners will get that, right?
Yes.
People that are just kind of like, I think I want to own a business and I want to run it 10 hours a week. I'm like, do you know how hard this is going to be? Like, it's going to be hard. I don't care if it's petting dogs or men's health and wellness. Like, you have to understand all of the different things that it takes to make this business successful. And I love that if you have a pretty much standard, once you hit that break even point, the target isn't consistently moving in this model. And
by that time they've also built their team up. So that's why we scale into multi-unit the way that we do, because we want people to understand their business, understand how to establish and maintain a good staff, and then really scale to that point where they're ready. Okay, I've got a good staff in place. I'm hitting my numbers. I'm breaking that ceiling. And then they say, wow, there's another market over here. And they're starting to put their eyes on it, right? Because at that point, they know the business. They got a good staff. They're comfortable with the business model. And that's the kind of people that we want to go into multi-unit ownership, not the big developers that I see coming in the franchise industry of like, hey, I'm going to throw $5 million at this investment and hire 3 managers and then see what happens. Like, that's not the people that we want in this business.
Right. What does the labor model look like when they start?
A lot of times it's them, the franchise owner and a kennel attendant and a shift lead. It depends on, their plan that they're going to work out through their pro forma and what their strengths are, and can they build an appropriate team, right? But like Caleb said, they've got to learn the business. So how do you learn the business? You do it. You're in it, right? And so, but the goal is for it to scale pretty quickly. And most of our locations end up having around 6 to 8 employees, most of them being part-time. The larger locations have anywhere from 11 to 15 or 20 employees, but those are our really big kind of anomaly locations. So we look at about 6 to 8 employees. Because we're not in the playrooms all day, every day, you don't need a lot of people. Right. So you need somebody to man the front desk, obviously, and intake dogs. You need somebody in the back that's going to be cleaning up waste, right? Cleaning, that's really important. People sometimes don't think about that, but cleaning up waste and making sure the dogs are safe. But we have a 15-to-1 dog to human ratio. And so that means on any given day, you've got 3 to 4 employees working total. So
Okay.
we really try to create this business model so that the payroll line is at least a little bit controllable, because the two biggest expenses are going to be payroll and rent, right? So
Yep.
that dog to human ratio is really important to controlling that payroll line.
All right.
Yeah, and I like to call out that generally people are working like partial shifts. They're not working like doubles, I would say. What most people are relating to like 12-hour days or 10-hour days. Generally, it's like an opening shift, and then our locations are closed during like the lunch hours for a couple
Okay.
hours. And so there's people coming in, dropping off for daycare, and then towards the middle of the day, it kind of slows down. And then the afternoon shift is people picking up for daycare. So the day's
Okay.
broken in half. So the owners kind of pick like, hey, do I want to come in the morning today? Do I want to staff the morning? Do I want to be in the evening when they're learning the business? And then they're hiring their part-time employees. So they'll have, morning shift employees, afternoon shift employees typically. Every conversation that we have in the discovery process, we harp on this, we focus on it. We want people that are trying to be different in this space and that want to lean into being different in this space. We want people
Okay.
that want to understand dogs, because how we manage dogs and how we run our dog management, it is different than the industry standard. We don't
Okay.
have webcams set up for parents to look at their dogs all day and call in and complain about their dog that's playing with a dog they don't want to play with. We don't do that. We do have cameras for us to secure and see on closed circuits, but
Great.
we don't do belly rub. Like, so these things that are so ingrained in people's minds that they want to see all day, we don't do those. We're different. So our owners are the front lines educating customers coming in the front door. So
Okay.
as an owner of this business, you have to see the differentiators, be a part of them, and want to be a part of the movement
Embrace
of
them.
giving, and
Okay.
be ready to embrace them. We really, really want people to just embrace the differentiators. Generally, that comes through experiencing it with their dogs
Okay.
personally, but
Got it.
it's a large part of what we're doing. So.
All right. Well, very good. Thank you guys so much for your help. I mean, like I said, this has been one of the longest ones we've ever done. But I think there's a lot of really good nuggets to take away for someone that's exploring not only doggy daycare businesses, but businesses in general. I think we're going to have people watch this for a couple different reasons, not just Houndstown. So this is
that.
really great education. So
Well,
thank you so much. Thank you for watching. If you're ready to take the next step, Integrity Franchise Group is here to help. Click the link below or reach out to us today to schedule an appointment. Let's work together to solve that franchise puzzle and turn your business dreams into reality. We cannot wait to connect with you.